In my story, I lived what seemed to be a perfect marriage until I accidentally discovered the secret relationship between my wife, Isabella, and my boss, Richard Thompson. This revelation turned my world upside down, forcing me to reevaluate our 25-year marriage in my life. During a business trip, or I thought would be another boring seminar, unexpectedly led me to witness my wife's intimate moment with another man in a restaurant. At that moment, I realized the truth hidden behind all the late nights and business trips. My marriage, my trust, my life, everything crumbled in an instant. Welcome to the Love and Betrayed Love channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Isabella, I promise to make it up to you. I mentally vowed to turn this disappointment around, but my boss had insisted on my attendance at the seminar. I looked at the agenda, which was filled with jargon and buzzwords, and couldn't help but think that nothing on it was worth missing. My wife and I celebrated together. Do not worry about it, Alex. I reassured myself, attempting to block out the guilt. We'll celebrate in style when we visit Europe for our 25th anniversary. I imagine us exploring quaint streets and indulging in fine cuisine, but that seemed too far away. Let's make the most of this weekend. I reminded myself, recalling our plans to escape somewhere nice when I returned. Isabella and I had been through so much together since our college days. Raising our two daughters, Olivia and Sophia, who were now on their own paths through college. Life had been a blur. Our love, however, had always served as the anchor. This anniversary might be slipping through my fingers, but I was determined to make it a memorable experience. A decade ago, I began a journey at Beekman's International, which has proven to be both challenging and rewarding. My job required frequent travel, but Isabella, ever resourceful, found ways to fill the void during my absences. Our marriage thrived amidst the whirlwind of my career. Our connection was strong, and our intimate moments were vibrant and satisfying. With the chaos of my work schedule as the only major impediment, I was blissfully unaware of any flaws in the facade of my seemingly perfect life. We enjoyed socializing on occasion, whether at corporate events or with friends from the neighborhood. Our two daughters had grown into independent young women, relying on us primarily for tuition and a few expenses while working their own jobs on campus. Isabella and I had a refreshingly simple love story, from our first date to our wedding ceremony. Everything went smoothly, no dramatic twists, no romantic upheavals, just the natural evolution of our relationship. It was another day of tedious routine, a predictable grind that dulled the senses. I was quite towering over the daily hustle and bustle, whereas Isabella, the epitome of grace and charm, was much shorter. Her fragile frame was smaller than mine to bridge the height gap. She frequently put on her favorite heels, transforming our outings into a stylish affair. Her dark brown hair catching the light, now streaked with hints of silver. Isabella exuded a sophisticated allure that drew attention wherever we went. She committed to jogging 3 times per week, demonstrating her dedication to health and vitality. She was truly a beautiful woman, and any man would consider himself fortunate to walk beside her. I'll call you once I'm settled in and give you the room number, I said, looking at my watch. That I would most likely be tied up for the majority of the afternoon and evening, but I will keep you updated. There was a sense of excitement, as if our routine was about to take an unexpected turn. They have planned a series of events that will last until late in the evening if things begin to drag on. I will not be making any calls tonight, but don't worry, Alex. I have a full plate to keep me busy. The girls dropped off some laundry over the weekend, and I just got the latest edition of the book club. So I'm all set. I will catch up with you on Friday night. After a quick kiss that lasted a little longer than usual, I drove to Baltimore. I drove for 3 hours, zigzagging through scenic country roads. Interstates are my style. The meeting was scheduled for the afternoon, giving me plenty of time to settle in. I called Tina to tell her I had arrived safely. However, as I sat through the session, I felt a twinge of frustration. It became painfully obvious that nothing new was on the agenda. I had skimmed the materials before arriving, but I was still hoping for an insightful discussion. It baffled me why they had sent me to a conference that seemed completely pointless. When the announcement came during a celebratory dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, I couldn't shake my irritation from the afternoon session. Yes, there were 2 locations in Baltimore, but no, we were going to Philadelphia, where they had a corporate account. As we approached the city, the rain drizzled down, creating a gloomy backdrop for what was supposed to be a festive evening. When we arrived, we discovered that they had reserved 2 prime tables for us in a private meeting room. That was a smart move, given the prices on their menu. I can only imagine how upset their paying customers would be if our rowdy group invaded the main dining area. After we placed our orders, I excused myself to freshen up in the men's room. While navigating the restaurant's dim lighting, my gaze fell on an unexpected sight. At the waitable sat my wife, Isabella, and Richard Thompson. She looked stunning. Her outfit was perfectly polished and her hair appeared to be freshly styled, a rare treat, as she only goes to the salon a few times a year for special occasions. A wave of confusion swept over me. What was happening here? It hit me like a thunderclap. Tonight marked our wedding anniversary, standing at the far end of the crowded restaurant. A sense of clarity washed over me. All those late-night business trips and back-to-back seminars began to make sense. The most striking realization for me was Isabella's close relationship with Richard Thompson, which I had completely overlooked. Richard, who had never interacted with us, had somehow woven himself into the fabric of our lives without my knowledge. But to be honest, it didn't matter. The thought of our romantic trip to Europe felt like a distant fantasy slipping through my fingers. The restaurant was bustling around me and I didn't want to disrupt anyone's evening. So I slipped away to a quiet corner near a hallway leading to the restroom, where I could catch glimpses of Isabella in the conference room without drawing attention to myself. I expected her to turn off her cell phone in this situation, but she didn't. Hello, honey. After calling home, I heard her voice murmur softly and was greeted with silence. Isabella tried to handle the call discreetly, but the tension in the air was palpable and I couldn't help but wonder what secrets were being shared just a few steps away. Navigating the chaos of a busy, expensive restaurant is a difficult task. I'm truly sorry, Alex. Isabella spoke with frustration in her tone. I was down in the basement and totally missed your call. I honestly didn't expect you to contact me. What's happening? Richard's expression twisted into a disgusted mask as Isabella lowered her voice, attempting to keep her conversation private. I just wanted to let you know that I am on my way home. The conference concluded earlier than expected. I should be back in about one. Cannot wait to see you. Isabella's eyes widened with alarm. What? Hold on, Alex. The washing machine is making strange noises. She quickly covered the phone receiver with her hand and leaned closer to Richard, her urgency palpable. The intensity of their conversation was palpable and her frantic gestures communicated volumes without hesitation. Richard grabbed his phone and quickly pressed the speed dial, ready to face whatever crisis was brewing. Isabella's face darkened with fear as she absorbed the news he had just delivered with trembling hands. She lifted the phone to her lips, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex, where are you? I believe you already know the answer, he replied, his tone dripping with indifference. By the way, you look stunning in that black dress. It looks great with the pearls I gave you last Christmas. You do not need to bother coming home tonight. His words rushed down her spine like a cold wind. I will be home tomorrow. Oh, by the way, happy anniversary. Wait. Alex, we need to talk. Her plea echoed in the silence, but he was already leaving. Do they always say that? It was probably the most cliched expression a woman caught cheating could pull off, but it hung in the air like a storm cloud. As I stepped out of the restaurant, the rain continued to fall, reminding me of my soaked state. My car was stuck in Baltimore, leaving me stranded in Philadelphia. I trudged towards the city's heart. The downpour soaked me in seconds. Oddly enough, I didn't care. My phone vibrated in my pocket a few times, but I let it ring. I'm tuning out the world around me. I eventually silenced it after deciding to save the battery for a more pressing occasion. I briefly considered missing out on a sumptuous steak at Ruth's Chris, but that notion vanished the moment I stepped into a cheesesteak restaurant. Despite my low mood, I found solace in the city's iconic sandwich. It was the best cheesesteak I'd ever tried, the kind that makes you forget your problems, if only for a moment. Renting a car and driving home would have been the logical choice, but I found myself reluctant to return to that cozy refuge full of my belongings. Home felt like a trap, a place where reality seemed too close for comfort. Instead, I walked the short distance from the sandwich shop to the nearby bar. The atmosphere was alive, with laughter and clinking glasses, and I surrendered to the evening's 6 beverages later. The weight of the world had slipped off my shoulders and I was ready to fall into the blissful oblivion of sleep. I awoke in a dingy little room that seemed more suited to a quick unceremonious rendezvous than a night's sleep. The remnants of last night's storm had wreaked havoc on my suit, rendering it a soggy mess beyond repair. With the sun rising and the world outside coming to life, I knew I needed to take action. A bus stop was only 3 blocks away, a ray of hope. In an otherwise gloomy morning, I came across a vending machine that sold the essentials: a razor and a tube of shaving cream. It was not luxurious, but within minutes I was able to transform my disheveled self into someone who resembled a functioning adult. A quick trip to the nearby store yielded a pair of cotton pants and a polo shirt for less than 20, a small victory in an otherwise chaotic day. As I collected my thoughts, I realized my suit and white shirt had become the property of a local charity, a bittersweet gesture that signaled a turning point with banks finally open. Even though I don't live in Philadelphia, I took advantage of the opportunity. It was where the majority of my financial ties lay. I dealt with banks and business for many years. I acted quickly, closing both my checking and savings accounts in an almost reckless manner. I even dipped into my daughter's college fund, which weighed heavily on my conscience but seemed necessary at the time. The mortgage lending department at the bank was completely taken aback when I casually mentioned my decision to cancel my mortgage loan. Their surprise was palpable, especially given the impressive sum of $6,000 I had accumulated in my home, of course without foreclosure. After a moment of flustered silence, they reluctantly admitted that this was a beneficial arrangement for them, and handed me the release papers to sign. However, they quickly added that I'd also need my wife's signature. With a grin, I leaned back and said, "That sounds like a problem for you to solve." In another bold move, I decided to cut ties with my bank credit card after settling the balance. I had saved a significant amount of money through my life insurance policies, and the company agreed to send checks directly to my sister in Savannah. No fuss, no MUS. Meanwhile, Fidelity Mutual Funds was also on board, preparing to issue checks to my closed account. As I navigated this whirlwind of financial decisions, my self-owned battery decided to die on me. Fortunately, a kind receptionist offered me her phone, allowing me to contact work and update them on my latest adventures. It felt like a small victory in a day full of big changes. My department head was less than thrilled about my impending departure. After a series of failed counter-offers intended to keep me on board, he changed tactics and demanded an explanation for my abrupt departure. The tension in the room was palpable when I mentioned that Richard Thompson had orchestrated my departure in a rather scandalous manner. I calmly informed him that the deed had been completed and there was nothing he could do to undo it. With a resigned sigh, he promised to handle Thompson before sending me to HR. Meanwhile, my colleagues rallied around me, eager to ensure a smooth transition. They were more than willing to send my final paychecks, profit sharing, sick leave, and accrued vacation pay to my sister, providing a sense of community that made the transition easier. The receptionist, ever resourceful, even gave me Richard Thompson's home phone number, a small gift for my future plans. With a few phone calls, I quickly canceled payments onto outstanding credit cards, shedding the last vestiges of my previous life. An hour later, I found myself on a bus bound for Baltimore, ready to reclaim my car and gather the few belongings I had stashed in my hotel room. It was a new beginning, and I could almost feel the freedom that awaited me. The journey from Baltimore to Savannah would take an entire day, a long stretch of tarmac and uncertainty. My sister Tracy and I had a strong bond, so I knew I needed to tell her everything that had been on my mind. I also needed to inform her about some checks that would soon arrive at her door. As I got into the car, I plugged in my phone to charge the screen, which lit up with a flurry of missed calls. I chose to let them ring while I was lost in thought. Soon I'd have a new phone number, a new beginning. But for now I had hours of solitude ahead of me. It's time to reflect and untangle the knots in my mind. But one question nagged at me. What drove Isabella to contact Richard Thompson? I felt adrift, unable to pinpoint when it all started or how it had devolved into such a mess. Was I a willing participant in this drama, or was I merely a passive observer caught in the crossfire of someone else's actions? The road ahead was long, but the deeper journey into my own mind seemed even more daunting. In some ways I had to acknowledge that I had failed as a husband, but after a few hours of reflection I felt a strange sense of liberation. I realized I didn't feel the weight of blame or the desire to nag. The past was etched in stone. There was no rewriting. It was time to begin a new chapter. I wished I had my birth certificate, passport and driver's license on hand, but I knew I could manage. I always did. My laptop and briefcase were my lifelines, and a car charger for my phone would suffice, as I didn't intend to rely on it. My health insurance was still good for another 90 days, so I wasn't worried about getting sick. This was my moment of freedom, and I was ready to seize it. About an hour after taking off from Baltimore, I decided to call Richard Thompson's wife. The information she gave me was unsettling. Richard had been laid off that morning, but he hadn't told her much about it. She thanked me for my candor and promised that Richard's situation would have consequences both for him and for me. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that he had it coming. After that, I called Tracy to let her know I was on my way. As I approached, I noticed Tracy lounging on the porch, a welcome sight amidst the chaos. She smiled teasingly as she said, "Welcome, my wayward brother. Your wife has tried to reach you twice." She did not explain why it was so urgent or why you were coming to see your sister. "I have a feeling you're about to spill the entire story, or else I'll have to kick your ass." The porch was a cozy scene, with four rocking chairs swaying gently in the breeze and a fridge stocked with cold beers, promising a much-needed break from the day's stresses. Tracy was older than me, and while I used to think of her as a little smarter, perhaps wiser was a better term. I sank into the weathered cushion beside her, observing the expression on her face. It was a look that indicated she was bracing for the unexpected. Truth be told, I was right there, with her life had thrown us a curveball in the midst of it all. Her little brother, who had always been so vibrant, had gone blind and was in desperate need of some soothing words. With a sad smile, Tracy handed me a chilled bottle of beer, the condensation ripping down like the weight of our common concerns. The rocking chairs creaked gently beneath us as we rested our feet on the porch railing, watching the world pass by in a blur of headlights and shadows. Tracy and her husband, Alex, had built their home, a sturdy old brick two-story, as a labor of love. Over the last 20 years, Alex's handyman skills had proven invaluable, especially when he took on the daunting task of replacing half of the wood in the lower section of the house. Termites, it appeared, thrived in the damp coastal air, making their presence known as unwelcome guests. But there we were, surrounded by the soothing hum of the evening, attempting to make our way through the storm. It turned out to be a stroke of luck, as it put us right in the heart of Savannah's historic district, but beneath the charming facades and cobblestone streets, a sinister undercurrent ran. Infidelity was in the air and I couldn't help but wonder, was Isabella or Alex the true scoundrel in this tangled web? As I reflected on my own flaws, I couldn't shake the impression that I was too socially awkward to meet anyone new. It seemed only natural that Isabella had wandered. Tracy paused, her thoughts racing. I wasn't attempting to sugarcoat the harsh reality, but admitting that my wife had betrayed me felt like a punch in the gut. Good grief, Alex. This is not what I expected at all. I never imagined Isabella had it in her. But how did everything spiral out of control? The answer eluded me, and, to be honest, I had lost interest in the details. What I discovered was a shocking revelation. She had a relationship with my boss who had been sending me on business trips under the guise of work while keeping her company. The irony was almost too harsh here. I was blissfully unaware until the truth jolted me awake. I never had the chance to confront her about it. I just walked away. My heart is heavy with betrayal. Could it be that I miscalculated everything? No way. She looked me directly in the eyes and spun a web of lies when everything went down. She was sitting across the table from him in that restaurant, while I was on the phone with her listening to her claim that she was at home sorting through laundry. I was only 10 m away watching the entire scene unfold. It was impossible to miss, even though I couldn't believe my own eyes. Sure, I never caught them tangled in a hotel room or on the sheets, but deep down I know what happened. Reconciliation appears to be impossible right now. Trust was shattered beyond repair. It seems like a distant dream. Now we finished the second bottle, and an uneasy silence enveloped us for 10 minutes, as the reality of what had happened settling not formed in my stomach. Why don't you freshen up before dinner? Alex will be home any minute. You two can reminisce while I prepare some shrimp. I promise not to say anything. If you want to keep it a secret, just be sure to tell him. I said hello. Secrets like these tend to fester. It is better to let them breathe. I spent days with Tracy and Carlson, a lively couple whose 2 adult sons had already flown home. Carlson, who had recently gained a few pounds, graciously offered me some of his spare items, which I desperately needed. Tracy. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. Promised to keep my checks and incoming mail until I provided my address. The uncertainty of my future hung over me like a thick fog. Isabella called the next day, but Tracy expertly deflected by claiming I was out. I asked her to contact the girls at the college. After I left, explaining my situation in a way that would reassure them, particularly about tuition arrangements, I wasn't quite prepared to face them before I hit the road. I got a new cell-phone number and treated myself to 2 pairs of comfortable shoes. The thought of the interstate made my skin crawl, so I chose the scenic route along Old 301 as I headed south. This neighborhood's charming eateries were a pleasant surprise. Where else can you have lunch at Crystal's and breakfast at Waffle House? It felt like a little slice of heaven. That first night I found myself sleeping in my car, tucked away in Walmart's parking lot, wedged between 2 massive vans. It was far from luxurious, but it felt like the start of a new journey. Aside from the delicious dining options, one of Crystal's standout features is its free Wi-Fi. While I didn't feel compelled to surf the web, knowing that I could access the digital world if necessary was comforting. As I meandered along the picturesque street Alex and River in Patka, the day took an unexpectedly charming turn. It was mid-morning when I pulled into a quaint gas station that also served as a dock and a cozy restaurant near the main road. This hidden gem was visible from the bridge that spans the river. The gravel-strewn parking lot added to its rustic charm, while the dark, weathered but character-filled building hinted at its former glory as a bustling marina. The restaurant itself was a unique two-story establishment. The structure was half on the dock and half on solid ground. The paint had faded long ago, leaving a patina that seemed to tell stories about the many years it had spent greeting visitors across the street. 3 old mobile homes stood sentinel, each as weathered and time-worn as the restaurant itself. This location, with its distinct blend of nostalgia and charm, felt like an ideal slice of local culture waiting to be discovered. The gas stations appeared to be an old relic designed for weary boars drifting down the river. Its sign, which proudly read S's Fish House, beckoned with a hint of nostalgia that pulled at my heartstrings. I spent my high school years working for Captain Lee's. As I cautiously approached the riverbank, I felt a wave of memories rush over me. The restaurant appeared to have seen better days and was in desperate need of a makeover. Two teenage boys lounged on the dock, their feet dangling over the edge and staring blankly at the shimmering water. Meanwhile, raucous laughter and animated voices erupted from within the restaurant, providing a stark contrast to the peaceful scene outside. These boys were clearly seeking refuge from the chaos inside, which appeared to be thriving despite the disrepair around it. I wanted to strike up a conversation without interrupting their moment. The older boy fixed his gaze on me, a grin spreading across his face. Charlie arrived at work drunk again, he announced in an amused and frustrated tone. Mom wants him fired, but he's the only cook she can find. If he leaves, the entire establishment may cease to function. I nodded, indicating my understanding, putting together their story. I guess you're stepping in to help her, I inquired, hoping to encourage them to share more. Yes, but we are stuck. He shrugged because the restaurant serves beer. Lucas and I are not permitted to work in the lounge until we turn 18. We can assist in the kitchen, but it doesn't do much for Mom. Just then the back door swung open, and Charlie stumbled out, a chaotic figure against the backdrop of the setting sun. It was obvious that S's Fish House was more than just a restaurant. It was a battleground for dreams, struggles, and unexpected friendships. Based on his clumsy attempts to get up, it was clear that he was deep in the bottle. Don't even think about coming back. Her voice sliced through the haze like a knife. That was my first encounter with Morgan Miller, a fiery sea gem lost in the sweltering heat of Florida. She stood in the kitchen doorway, her eyes filled with rage. Charlie was fortunate that she did not have anything handy. I had no doubt she would have thrown it at him without thinking twice. Morgan was a striking presence, standing around 6 feet tall, with a physique that exemplified strength and resilience. The uniform she wore appeared ill-fitting, implying a woman who valued practicality over style. I wasn't one to stare, but in her case the lack of curves was almost noticeable, and I quickly chastised myself for making such a juvenile observation. Her shoulder length, brown hair framed, her face sculpted by sharp cheekbones, and her dark brown eyes were full of depth, hinting at untold stories. The lack of makeup accentuated her rugged charm, a testament to the difficult life she had led. She stood tall, chin raised defiantly, as Charlie walked down the dock, cutting through the salty air. Her gaze pierced through me, fierce and unwavering, as if I were the source of her rage. What the hell are you looking at? She clearly held a grudge not only against Charlie, but against anyone who dared to intrude on her personal space. I introduced myself, feeling an unexpected desire to break the silence. My name is Alex Sen. I am looking for a job. The words tumbled out before I could question myself. In that moment it seemed like the best thing to say, but the truth was far from it. The boys nearby let out a ripple of laughter. Their laughter combined with the salty breeze made me feel even more embarrassed. Now Lucas, Ethan, hurry inside and prepare for dinner. Morgan's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. There is nothing funny about this, and I will not tolerate your attitude. The boys scampered and their laughter faded like twilight. Morgan focused her attention back on me. Her expression softened slightly but remained skeptical. I'm Monday. Do you have any experience in the restaurant industry? Her tone was all business, but there was a hint of curiosity behind her steely gaze. For 2 adventurous years, I plunged headfirst into the bustling world of food preparation at a busy restaurant. While I wouldn't claim to be a culinary expert, I had learned how to navigate a busy kitchen. There was something alluring about the rhythm of the kitchen that kept me coming back like a captivating game. I couldn't quite explain, but found completely enchanting. I expected to spend little time there nonetheless. I found myself enthralled, eagerly accepting each challenge that came my way. My first day as a cook at S's Catfish House was nothing short of hectic. However, it went surprisingly well, sure. I mixed up a few orders here and there, but nothing major occurred. The team around me was extremely helpful, guiding me through the necessary procedures and assisting me in locating the ingredients I needed. My primary responsibilities included baking fresh bread and preparing savory roasts. Although I was more accustomed to frying fish in batter, I soon realized that the fundamentals were very similar, cleaning the fryers after the lunch rush. They appeared to have not been cleaned in a long time. Fortunately, there was an oil filter system in place, which made the job slightly easier, although the fryers remained a greasy challenge. Morgan, my experienced colleague, and I spent the majority of the afternoon preparing for dinner service. She generously shared her cabbage to recipe with me, and I absorbed every detail as she guided me through the entire menu, ensuring that I was confident in our offerings. It was mainly catfish, but I felt like I was embarking on a culinary adventure, one tasty bite at a time. Even though our conversation was short on words, she seemed to recognize me. The concept pleased me and piqued my interest. I was looking for a way to pass the time, and this unexpected connection seemed like the ideal distraction. After the evening's cleanup, Morgan surprised me with a chilled cocktail and we settled in for a cozy conversation. Oh, and before I forget, I'd like to express my gratitude for your assistance in getting me out of that difficult situation today. I express my gratitude sincere anytime. She responded with a playful smile for 20 per hour, willing to help with anything slow down. Where did the figure of 20 come from? I laughed, astounded by her boldness, just trying to determine how grateful you truly are. She gave me a wink back. Charlie only received 6 per hour. I waved my hand dismissively. I don't need your services for that price. Honestly, I cannot afford what you are asking. It was light-hearted banter, but there was a palpable tension beneath it. I can nudge it up a little, but don't get too ambitious. 6 is enough, Mrs. Miller. The real challenge, however, is locating a place to crash. I can push myself a little, but let's not be overly ambitious. 6 is enough, Miss Miller. The main issue is finding a place to stay. Overnight, the guys and I sat in one of the trailers across the street. Eleanor, the primary matriarch, resides in the largest. I rented a restaurant for my son. Felix operates a gas station and lives in the third trailer. There is a storage room upstairs, but do not get your hopes up. There's no furniture or plumbing. You can stop by the restaurant for a restroom break and I'll make sure you can shower in the trailer. So how much does this swanky suite cost? How about some extra incentive? Is there any available overtime? I will pay you for a standard 40-hour week. Anything more than that is on the house. You work every day, so I take Mondays off to recharge. How could I not feel drawn to this woman? However, the first night in the warehouse was a completely different story. The air was thick with dust. The floor felt unyielding beneath me, and every creak echoed the unease in my surroundings. Despite the rocky start, I took the Subaru for a spirited drive, testing its limits, the best aspect of my new life. I had a fully equipped kitchen where I could make my own breakfast creations. After a week of settling in, I began to feel more at home. I decided it was time to call Tracy and tell her my new address. She had a few letters waiting to be sent, and I couldn't help but hope that some of them included checks. The first Monday I went to the bank to open an account and reserve a safe deposit box. It felt liberating to finally put away the money that had been weighing me down. I brought the boys along and we had a great time looking for used furniture. Their enthusiasm enhanced the trip and I enjoyed their company. However, I still felt a twinge of discomfort whenever I had to shower in Morgan's trailer. It was a stark reminder of how far I still needed to go. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was intruding on her personal space, still with some PVC pipe and a dash of imagination. I managed to set up an outdoor shower behind the restaurant. It resembled a quirky changing room, and surprisingly it served its purpose well, as long as the temperature did not drop too far. The guys were eager to help with the shower project and even took the first step, testing it out like daring adventurers. Morgan told a story that hung in the air like the aroma of fresh bread. 8 years ago, her husband died in a tragic accident on an offshore rig. He'd stayed behind during a hurricane, and the results were disastrous. The insurance money she received became a lifeline, enabling her to open this restaurant. A place full of laughter, memories, and the aroma of home-cooked food. She and Eleanor had formed a strong bond, sharing secrets and smiles as they faced life's challenges. Meanwhile, Lucas and Ethan approached me. Their youthful energy was infused with a sense of longing. I sensed they were looking for a father figure, and I couldn't help but feel a tug on my heartstring as I took on that role, if only for a moment. My relationship with their mother was strictly professional, with a clear boundary. However, there were brief moments when I found myself thinking about her in a different light. Still, I didn't want to jeopardize the solid rapport we developed. It was time to check on my daughters. Fortunately, they were both at the University of Pennsylvania, so one phone call would suffice. I recognized Sophia as soon as I heard her voice. "Hello, Dad, we were just wondering when you'd reach out. Is that me?" There are two EMIS in the classroom. Mom has been a bundle of nerves, hysterical but also kind of avoiding the real problems. Olivia, and I think we should hear your side of the story. What's going on? I exhaled. The weight of their concern was heavy on my shoulders. I apologize. It has come to this, darling. Let us dive into the chaos of the evening. Imagine this mother with a twinkle in her eye has planned the ideal surprise for your anniversary, an intimate dinner for two at that upscale steakhouse you've always admired. But here's a twist. She didn't do this alone. Your boss was in on the secret and helped her plan the whole thing. Your heart sinks as you walk into the restaurant, full of excitement. There they are. Your mother and your boss laugh as if they were old friends. Panic comes over you, and before she can even begin to explain the chain of events that led to this unexpected scene, you're left stunned, caught in a storm of confusion and disbelief. What's going on? That's an excellent lie, Sophia. Your mom had no idea. I was going to that restaurant. She was surprised to see me. I dialed her number while sitting in the restaurant only a few feet away. She said casually, "I'm just doing laundry at home." But when she saw me lurking in the shadows, her composure broke into a million pieces. This was not an elaborate surprise party. No, it was orchestrated by my boss and your mother, who planned to get me out of town so they could meet in secret. I had her cornered, and her frantic attempts to conceal her surprise only highlighted the situation. It was a much more plausible explanation than the one she had given. "So what do you want us to do now?" I asked. My curiosity was piqued, and I couldn't help but wonder why she called from Savannah. "Just so. You know I am not in Savannah," I responded, a smirk creeping across my face. "They just handed me a phone there." "Don't be too harsh on Mom, but try to get her to tell you the truth. That is it. What else could we do if you are coming home for Thanksgiving? Please go to the office and get my passport, birth certificate, and card documents. Send them to your Aunt Tracy. Let her ensure that I receive them. Do not tell Mom. Please don't give her my cell phone number. I do not want to change it again. I'm sorry for everything. Dad, Olivia and I are always a phone call away if you find yourself in need. Thank you for everything. Oh, and guess what? I've covered all of your tuition, so you can breathe simple now." Once I'd sorted that out, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I was hesitant to tell Sophia about her mother, but deep down I knew she trusted what I said. Isabella's story was captivating, given the circumstances, This may be the best she could offer, but it was fragile and under scrutiny. I was eager to learn more about the affair, but the potential heartache didn't seem more worthwhile. Meanwhile, business at the Catfish House was booming. Tracy delivered the checks along with the paperwork the girls had prepared. Soon I'd be able to get some new automobile tokens in Florida. When the current supplies ran out, I deposited my restaurant paycheck into my bank account, but the majority of my savings remained in a safety deposit box with historically low interest rates. It felt like I wasn't missing out and my money was much safer. There I ate at work all week, so by Monday I was ready to get out and do something different. The boys were always eager to go on adventures with me, and Morgan was never far behind. It was my treat, and while we never said it aloud, it felt like a date in every way that mattered. The bustling Chinese buffet cafe had quickly become my favorite hangout, but Morgan and her crew were all about the sushi. We sometimes had to hit the road for a long stretch, but I didn't mind the drive at all. Morgan's hard exterior softened with each passing week, and the anger that had once defined her seemed to fade away. We'd met on and off since the first day. I thought I caught her glancing my way while we worked, but she quickly looked away as if she was afraid of what she might say. I was still bound by marriage, but Morgan was becoming increasingly captivating by the day. The restaurant was consistently busy. The profits were barely scraping. By forcing me to live on a shoestring budget, whatever Morgan paid me went straight to the bank, where it seemed to gather dust. My living expenses were almost non-existent. I refilled my gas tank once a month and spent Monday evenings with my family. It's strange how Lucas, Ethan, and Morgan had woven themselves into my life, making me feel like family without even knowing it's just happened, a lovely accident of connection. Eleanor, on the other hand, looked forward to her daily lunches at Sawdust, which were always free of charge. It was clear she was getting tired of the menu, her eyes scanning the options with a hint of resignation. I was only a lowly employee Morgan's, so I kept my thoughts to myself, but I listened intently and absorbed the atmosphere around me. Our regulars were mostly local guys who cared more about their pints than the plates in front of them. Then, shortly before Christmas, my phone rang with the familiar name, Olivia. "How are you holding up, Dad?" she asked. Her voice was warm but tinged with concern. "I think I'm fine. No complaints here," I replied. "Are you preparing for school again?" "Yeah. Next month. I just wanted to check in and make sure you were ready for the vacation." "I am fine," I reassured her. "I assume you and Sophia will spend time with your mother." "Yeah, but we're not particularly excited about it, especially now that we have the full story." "Could you please fill me in?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "You'll probably dislike what I have to say, but you were correct about everything about Mom and Mr. whatever his name is." Her words hung in the air heavy with meaning, and I knew the holiday season was about to change. I had not anticipated this. They'd been together for over a year, and the truth eventually came out. They were deeply involved in a passionate affair. She was reluctant to end her marriage. She too was unwilling to cut ties with him. Their arrangement struck a delicate balance that felt just right, albeit chaotic. Sophia and I exchanged glances and quickly interjected, urging her to stop discussing the intimate details of their escapades. We just didn't want to hear the specifics. Sophia rarely interacts with her mother. In that moment I realized I felt the same way. I had no desire to delve into the finer details of her secret life. Her relationship with Anawa failed spectacularly. After losing his job, he blamed her as a scapegoat for his misfortune. His wife, fed up with the betrayal, filed for divorce, and he once again pointed fingers at his mother. The last I heard, he had moved to Chicago, leaving her behind without a word of invitation. Mom recently started answering phones at an insurance company, but she has been struggling financially. After I left, she quickly ran out of money and was unable to pay her utility bills. Although she is only now getting back on her feet, it appears that she is selling her jewelry and other belongings. The bank said she could stop making house payments if she signed an authorization, but I suspect she'll try to sell it instead to sister her. With that, I'll send you a power of attorney form which you can deliver to her when you return home for Christmas. I believe she will really appreciate it. She's been wondering why you haven't filed for divorce yet, but I have no intention of doing so when she's ready. She must take that step. I don't have any money or a job, so I'm living off the grid. When I made a withdrawal from the bank before leaving, my situation is about to end. I saw no reason to tell my daughters or my wife about the money I'd saved while waiting for my release. My wife has never shown much interest in our finances, and unless she hires a top-tier lawyer, she isn't likely to find out. I assumed she would hire the cheapest lawyer available. I'll make sure to notify her once we arrive. Olivia, I apologize for not buying gifts for you girls this holiday season. I promise to do my best to make things up to you. Please let us know where you'll be after the school year ends, so that we can pay you a visit over spring break. Then you can make things up to us. This is a deal. Merry Christmas. For the past month, I've had to rely on Morgan to shower whenever I was there. She appeared preoccupied. As a result, there was no chance of breaking any social boundaries. North Florida can get quite cold, so I needed her assistance for a few months. I'd gotten to the point where I wouldn't mind a little inappropriate behavior from her. I hadn't been brave enough to suggest something like that myself, fearing that it would upset her. Typically, I would shower while the boys were in school after not getting anything for my daughters for Christmas. I felt guilty when I decided to buy the boys new Game Boys and Morgan a lovely turquoise necklace. She frequently wore collarless blouses, and I could easily imagine how lovely she would look with matching accessories. On Christmas Eve, we closed the Catfish house early to open gifts. Morgan and the boys surprised me with a GPS unit for my Subaru, and we ate boiled shrimp and whole crawfish. The excitement lasted for a while, but the boys were eager to play with their new toys. Morgan encouraged them to go home without waiting for her. Ethan gave me a wink and a thumbs up as they left, and the holiday appeared to be going well. Morgan and I spent the next hour conversing. We avoided discussing past relationships. Even though I was still married, Morgan did not appear to care. I was taking my time processing everything, so she finally took my hand and led me upstairs. We'd been holding back our frustrations for months, and it felt like it was about to boil over. It turned into a fun competition to see who couldn't rest first. Morgan's physique was reminiscent of a weightlifter with well-defined abs, similar to those seen in Relax advertisements instead of softness. Her breasts were remarkably firm. Despite having 2 children, she kept a remarkable posture. My admiration for her figure's natural beauty without jewelry was perhaps misplaced. She was undeniably beautiful. Despite our acquaintances, we exchanged a passionate kiss. During that moment, I wasn't sure where to place my hands. Our glistening bodies were nestled together, and when I noticed the room had cooled, I leaned over and draped a similar blanket over us. Morgan released a soft purr of contentment. We cuddled beneath the blanket for a few moments before she raised her head and said, "Merry Christmas, Alex." Morgan was startled when she heard the boys' footsteps down the stairs, prompting her to get out of bed and start getting dressed. When I arrived downstairs, the boys were already at the breakfast table. Ethan smiled widely and gave me a thumbs up. I don't think Lucas fully understood what was going on. I had dinner with the boys while their mother went home for a shower. During that period, I had a troubling thought about birth control. Following that, my interactions with Morgan became more frequent. She rarely spent the night, but there were times when it was pleasant. Not long after returning from vacation, Ethan took the time to explain to Lucas how our lives were changing. Both boys seemed content with the new arrangement. Tracy had submitted the divorce papers at the beginning of the school year. Isabella included a brief note thanking the power of attorney and mentioning that she had received an offer on the house. The divorce procedure was straightforward, direct and uncomplicated. I was responsible for the girls' school, and that was it. I signed and returned the documents to Isabella's attorney. I realized I'd revealed my location, but I didn't care. Morgan asked if I had any ideas for the restaurant menu, giving me nearly complete freedom to make changes. As I saw fit, I was hesitant to ask if I could proceed, but I appreciated her trust in me when she proposed it. The seafood wholesaler was eager to add several packages of frozen whitefish portions to our weekly catfish order. Ethan was eager to learn how to make fish and chips, which were essentially an American take on a British classic. Throughout the school year, Morgan and I handled everything together. The company was growing steadily but gradually, allowing us to manage things smoothly. We never anticipated the impact that expansion would have. On weekends, I let the boys handle the cooking. My expectations were modest and I was satisfied with their efforts. Morgan owned the business, but I sensed she wanted me to take on more responsibilities. Initially, I would make suggestions, but she eventually seemed to appreciate my ability to make decisions on my own. She never expressed any criticism or dissatisfaction with my decisions. I never imagined myself in this of work. Nonetheless, it appeared to be becoming my path. I hope this does not come across as overly dramatic. Felix piqued my interest and even gave the gas station a new coat of paint. After a quick call to his supplier, he got gleaming new signs and some updated pumps that accepted credit cards. After everything was set up, the salesman persuaded him to install racks to sell various travel items. Felix paid nothing and received a portion of the profits. This upgrade gave the space a more polished appearance. Meanwhile, Ethan turned 16 and received his learner permit. I had a great time teaching him how to drive an SUV, and I believe Amanda was relieved to avoid that responsibility. In just 2 years, Lucas would take the wheel one day. A friendly man from Moss Bluff arrived with a truckload of alligator tail meat. He spent half an hour trying to convince me of the health benefits of eating reptiles. While he had a decent understanding of the subject, his sales abilities were far from impressive. I tried to pretend interest to avoid hurting his feelings, especially since he had a frozen turtle in his truck. He seemed to sense that the conversation was not going as well as he had hoped, so he made a clever move. I will give you 5 pounds of alligator tails and 5 pounds of turtle for free to try. I'll come back in a week and see how things go. How does that sound? His offer caught me off guard and it felt a little too bold. I responded that he unexpectedly threw a punch. Sure, I'd be happy to give it a try. Have you got any cooking tips? I asked. Most people prefer it battered, breaded and fried. He said, how much will it cost if I end up liking it? He reached into the back and handed me a green sheet containing prices, phone numbers and state permit numbers for alligator and sea turtle meat. Depending on how I portioned it, I could make a good profit if I sold it. Thank you, Mr. Kerr. I'd gladly give it a shot. I will see you in a week. His name, phone number and address were listed at the top of the document. The fish and chips section of the menu worked perfectly for us. Initially, we only ate it for dinner when Ethan was present, but we soon found ourselves eating it all day. By the end of the week, we'd run alligators and turtles, so I had to contact Richard Colette to place another order. The combination plate with alligator, turtle and catfish quickly became a customer favorite. Things moved more quickly than we had anticipated. Typically, Morgan and I did the dishes after each meal. We only had enough clean dishes to provide regular service, but as our customer base grew, we ran out. That's when we decided to bring Hector aboard. Despite his limited English, he was good at washing dishes and never complained. He cycled to the restaurant every day and worked both the lunch and dinner shifts. I have no idea where he lives. The following Saturday, when Richard Kedder delivered the alligator and turtle, he was accompanied by a young girl. Ethan eagerly offered to help unload the frozen meat bags from the truck. Morgan and I noticed him constantly looking at a girl nearby, and he even stumbled. At one point, she appeared to be about Ethan's age, possibly a little older. Morgan appeared to enjoy the entire scene. That night at dinner, we all began teasing him about it. As February came to a close, some unexpected events occurred. We had just opened for the day and I was getting the fryers ready when Morgan came back into the kitchen. "Surprise. Alex, you've got a visitor." She spoke flatly. "Your wife is here." I couldn't tell whether she was sad, happy, worried, or feeling something else entirely. After taking a deep breath, I entered the dining room to see Isabella for the first time in months. She looked stunning, as always, with flawless hair and makeup, and her outfit accentuated her figure beautifully. Morgan remained inside the kitchen. "Hello, Alex. You're difficult to track down. You look fantastic. I didn't expect to see you. Do you have a specific reason for your visit?" I detected a hint of nervousness in her voice. She nervously bit her lower lip and moved her weight from one foot to the other. "I just wanted to give you a copy of the final divorce decree." I explained it went through faster than usual and I assumed you'd need it right away. She handed me a folded document that I didn't bother opening. I brought along a check for half of the proceeds from the sale of the house, which was now occupied. It turned out to be just .0. I had not anticipated the realtor's commission taking such a large cut. She handed me the cashier's check and I noticed my name was on it. I took the check from her and signed it back. When I returned it to her, she gave me a puzzled look. "I don't need the money, Isabella. You can keep. It will help you get started. I am just curious, what are your plans?" "I have sold everything except my clothes. I'm going to Dallas to see my sister. She found me a job at her workplace. The girls have promised to pay me a visit next summer. I really hope everything works out for you. Do you have any questions or topics you'd like to discuss before I leave?" "Not really, I'm good. I don't need to know any more than I already do. Honestly, I can only manage having you here. Thank you for handing me the papers. I apologize, but I need to return to work right now. Everyone who has joined us for lunch will be arriving soon." I turned and went to the kitchen without looking back. I didn't want to come across as rude, but I also didn't want to spend any more time with her than necessary. Many may consider me unfeeling, but I was unconcerned about their opinions. There was nothing I could do to make up for what she had done to me. Morgan stood in the kitchen, staring out at the river, her face expressionless. I moved to the far end of the room and looked across the parking lot. Isabella had just gotten in her car and I could see her crying in the driver's seat. A minute later she was gone from my sight and I realized I'd never see her again. "I apologize, Morgan. I had no idea she was coming here. I don't even understand how she found me. I understand it is not my place to inquire, but what was her purpose?" She gave me a copy of the final divorce decree. Now she can move on. How about you? I wasn't as fortunate. I was once again captivated by the allure of the stunning Sea-Gem Queen. I seem to have an insatiable desire to captivate women. I noticed you don't have any rings on your fingers. How about meeting tomorrow? I finally received a response. Her face lit up with a big smile as she embraced me, her arms around my neck. After a few minutes of intense kissing, she pulled away and looked into my eyes. "Do you remember our Christmas Eve?" "How could I forget?" "Well, congratulations. You're going to be a father." The next day we got married and I left the warehouse. The guys were as excited as I was. Eleanor stopped eating at restaurants and instead had Morgan bring her light snacks or soup to our trailer. Once the evening rush had subsided, Felix sat down with Morgan and me one day and told us it was time for her to move into a nursing home. To make the transition possible, she had to sell a marina complex. At the time it wasn't technically a marina, but we weren't sure what to call it. Eleanor remained as sharp and astute as ever. I remained silent when Eleanor and I began negotiating. It took most of my saved money, but I eventually purchased everything from Eleanor, including the trailers. The only compromise I made was for Felix. I agreed to let him manage the gas station and boat docks. In exchange, I would pay him a salary and offer him free housing in his trailer. It worked out well for me because the station's earnings surpassed his salary. I also installed a dishwasher in the kitchen. This delighted Hector greatly. We hired a waitress to assist Morgan around the house, hoping she would be trained before the deadline. This happened when I was in the first or second year at junior high school. Evita was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. A single mother with 2 children was overjoyed when we offered her an empty trailer for a reasonable rental fee. Epilogue: as time passed, the marina continued to thrive beyond our expectations. Business grew, prompting us to shrimp dishes that could be prepared on the boats, which drew a large number of female customers. By the end of the summer, we had a dozen full-time boats on new listings, as well as a growing waiting list for the available spots. The only limitation we had was time. I felt a strong sense of happiness and fulfillment now that money was no longer an issue. Ethan had developed a close relationship with Richard Colette and his daughter Tracy. Meanwhile, Lucas seizes every opportunity that comes his way. He eventually started working with Felix and expressed a desire to take over the gas station. When Felix chose to retire, we had no idea Felix was considering retiring, and we assumed it would be a few years before that happened. Ethan was eager to continue working in the restaurant. After a few days with their mother, Innie and Sophie arrived to help around the house for the rest of the summer. They made the pantry their temporary home and never mentioned their mother. Morgan had a great rapport with my daughters. It is commonly believed that the father's genes influence a child's gender. Morgan gave birth to a baby girl in September, who we named Eleanor. As our first wedding anniversary approached, Morgan inquired about my preferred location for the celebration. I replied anywhere but a steakhouse. Isabella was involved in a car accident 2 years later and was forced to use a wheelchair, rendering all of her limbs immobile. My daughters went to see her, but I refused to see this lying woman. I gave her too much after the divorce, but my attention and sympathy aren't for her. She is now living in a disabled-only boarding house. My daughters and I pay for her stay there. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.